Michael officially shattered the record for the biggest opening weekend for a biopic in history, despite being flooded with negative reviews and accusation of whitewashing by critics. It surpassed Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer and Bohemian Rhapsody with an opening weekend of 97 million domestic and 217 million worldwide. It is now the number 2 global opener of 2026, trailing only Super Mario Galaxy movie. I mean, that's insane. These numbers should be a wake-up call for the industry. It's overperforming significantly, proving that the MGA fan base is far more resilient than critics may have realized. And it's also a major gamble for Lionsgate and Universal with a huge $155 million budget, including those infamous reshoots in which they had to remove the allegations against Michael. That was going to be the original ending. I believe the 1993 allegations, that was removed. So yeah, in the end, it seems they got their money's worth. But here's my take on it. This is the ultimate I told you so. In the last video, I mentioned that critics were trashing the movie. But when you have like a 97% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes and a A- cinema score, the critics kind of become irrelevant. The reality is critics wanted a gritty documentary about the dark side of Michael Jackson, and audiences wanted a celebration of the man's music. And that's exactly what they showed up for. And frankly, that's what this film delivered. I mean, it's to me, it's ultimately a bit of a concert film, where you're just watching Michael kind of deliver the hits. And that's what this film succeeded in doing. Actually, MJ's music is currently having its biggest streaming week in years, proving that the King of Pop's brand is still untouchable. And I would argue that this movie's secret weapon was Jafar Jackson. I mean, the word of mouth about his performance, even among people who hate the film, may have actually really drove the box office, right? People were curious to see if he could actually pull this off, and he definitely did, at least in my opinion. Say what you want about the movie, but Jafar Jackson was by far the best things in it, and he is definitely the reason to go see this movie if you're curious. And I would also argue that the critics themselves may have helped the movie, right? All of these headlines about the movie whitewashing and sanitizing Michael Jackson may have actually created curiosity for the film, may have actually had people going, oh, okay, let me see, there may have been some people who say, well, let me see if these critics are right. Let me go see this movie for myself to see if this movie being as bad as critics say ends up being true. So that ironically could have backfired and actually helped the movie. So who knows? Critics may have been one of the things that was positive for this. But because of the movie's success, there's also talk of a potential sequel from director Antoine Fuqua. He's already talking about, the covering, the later years, 1995 and beyond. It's going to be a tough one, right? There's obviously is a lot more controversial by the time we get into that time period and timeline, and probably a lot more legal issues. So, I would be surprised if that movie would ever get made. And even if it were made, box office wise, it's gonna be a trickier one, right? I'm not sure if they can get away with just being a pure celebration of the music as the first film is. You definitely would have to dive into a lot more controversial topics. And also, the success of this movie will no doubt lead to way more music biopics. I mean, you can see Hollywood mining every big popular artist they can find. And obviously, there's only one Michael Jackson. But, obviously the Beatles are going to come out with their own biopic. They're actually going to come out with 4 biopics in the same year. What was it, in 2027? I believe. I could be mistaken. But, you can definitely see the success of this movie leading us into maybe a superhero golden age of music biopics. For better or worse, right? You definitely can see that happening. We were already kind of, riding off of Bohemian Rhapsody and Straight Outta Compton and Rocket Man and all of these other movies. So don't be surprised if we start to see a lot more of that, thanks to Michael. But anyways, what do you guys think? Did the critics have a point about the movie being too safe, or are they just out of touch with what fans actually want? Does the 217 million opening weekend prove MJ's legacy is still untouchable? Let me know in the comments. Until then, I'm T-Rex, and I'm out.